I know a lot of people are not excited about the glow plugs coming to the 2025 Ram HD. But after this video, you might be just a little bit more excited about them. So I was excited to see the glow plugs. I know a lot of people will say that they're not as reliable. You have more things to fail versus just the grid heater, but I've seen enough failures on the grid heater to believe that this might not be a bad idea, especially the fact that the Cummins is only 6 cylinders compared to the 8 cylinders on the other two. With that being said, you guys know Josh from Truck Stuff. He's a master tech here in Utah. I feel as though once you see what he has discovered, this just might be the best upgrade that the new Cummins has. Not saying it is, but even those who have done the Barbeques intake upgrade for the grid heater, they've seen nothing but performance gains, better efficiency, and I just don't understand the hate of Ram going away from this thing. And so when you see this video, I want to hear you guys' thoughts in the comment section. By the way, if you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Also, you got to check out Truck Stuff. He and I pretty much work together. Hopefully soon here, you'll see something about us starting a business. I don't know if it's going to be this year, so I don't want to talk about it right now. We're still putting everything together, putting everything in place. It should be fun. And these videos are going to be really helpful for that too. You guys are going to be excited about it. But let's go ahead and jump into this thing. And yeah, this is Josh over at Truck Stuff.
Today we're going to continue on with a couple of the other videos that we've done in the past. You know, one of them being the air grid heater, and the other one being the whole controversy about dilution and contamination of your engine oil. So we have another issue on this one where the air grid heater didn't fail, but its inherent design failed the engine.
So right there, you guys heard it. We all know about the bolt that falls off that takes out one of the cylinders in the engine. And obviously it's a catastrophic failure, new engine. And if you're out of warranty, it's probably about $23,000, $24,000. Unless you buy a used engine, and it'll probably be maybe a little bit less than that, a little bit. So there's another problem that this grid heater causes. And this is something interesting because I did a video on something similar that he's going to talk about here. So just keep watching, keep listening.
You'll understand more as we go on this, okay? So what is the air grid heater? It's what preheats the air charge going in the engine on cold startups. Basic, simple, it's an EPA thing. It does help aid when it's in the super cold climate, but you can also plug in your truck and help with that. Now, the air grid heater has a series of grids that, excuse me, that use electricity to heat up the surrounding area from the heater itself and the intake air charge. Now, what I'm about to show you is an air grid heater that has almost 100% plugged off, and then we're going to talk about what causes this. So, without further ado, here she is. Now, as you can see, this one is...
Do you guys see that? That is insane. Now, I've seen some that have had some buildup, but you can still see the fins for the grid heater. But even if you were to compare this to what basically Barbeques has created, you have more volume of air that can flow through this thing without those grids. But when you are someone who just buys a diesel truck because you got to have a diesel truck and you don't know how to properly maintain it, this is the results of it. I mean, this is terrible. Oh my goodness. You cannot even see the fins anymore. It's insane. So let's just keep watching this thing. Wow.
Really, really bad. This one came out of a 2023 Ram 2500, and there was a couple other underlying issues as a continuation of diagnosis. We had excessive EGR flow codes, and we found that the EGR valve internal tumbler had rotated. That's also been a problem. There was a series of those EGR valves we had to replace. It was just a left and right thing right after they released out. So we get that problem taken care of, and then on the test drive, the vehicle has no power and throws PO402 excessive EGR flow again. Now, this time we were able to actually hear the EGR valves cycling on and off and on and off and on and off and on and off, just sitting there in an idle. Sounded like almost somebody tapping on metal like this. It was pretty interesting. Now, let's talk about what causes this specific to this vehicle. What causes this to plug up as bad as it did. Now, you get a lot of people out there that like to take their vehicles into the fast lube place down on the corner because it's convenient. The problem with doing that with a diesel is you do not get the oil drain time that's required by Stellantis.
I'm gonna stop right there. So, right out of the gate, we all kind of knew why this plugged up. You heard that this was a 2023 model year truck. Now, I didn't catch the miles on this one, but let's just assume it has less than 50,000 miles. You're telling me a 2-year-old truck created this much buildup on the grid heater. So he's talking about the oil change interval. Now, obviously, you might ask the question, well, what does this have to do with that? And he's going to explain that here in a second. I'm not going to play this whole video because you got to go over to his channel and watch it. But there's something I want to discuss on this side of the house too with this grid heater. So let's just keep watching.
To drain all the oil out of the engine. I'm going to show you a little quick excerpt out of our service information. They have removed the part where it tells you how long to drain the engine oil, but it does tell you how long you need to let it sit before you check your oil, which is a good indication of how long you need to let it sit to drain your oil. So here we go. Right here, you can see where it says, stop the engine, wait 30 minutes to allow the oil to drain back to the pan and check the level again. Now here's why that's important. These are big engines, lots of passages inside, lots of surface area that you have to let that oil drain back to the oil pan on. The problem we have with that is you go to your quick lubes, even when you go to a dealer and you go to the express lane to have your oil changed, they're trying to get them in as fast as possible. So you're lucky to get a 10-minute drain on these things. How do I personally do it? Well, most of these oil changes come with a rotate. First thing I do is lift up the vehicle and I pull the drain plug. Then I start my inspection. Go through and do everything underneath, checking the brakes, checking the differentials, checking for any oil leaks, fuel leaks, coolant leaks, so on and so forth. And then rotate the tires. After I get my tires rotated, the oil filter changed, we're ready to start considering putting the drain plug back in. It just depends on how long this whole process is taking me. If it has to wait for another 15 minutes, then it waits. I do not skimp on the time. I've got other vehicles I can work on, start diagnosing or whatever in the process of while I'm getting at least a 30-minute drain on that oil. So once you do get your oil drain and your drain plug back in, drop it back down. I don't put the full 3 gallons of oil back into these things. I put about 2.5 gallons in. And then I start it. Shut it off and let it wait again before you check the oil. Why is this so important? Making sure that you do not overfill these crankcases. Well, along with the PO402 EGR flow code that this one exhibited, we also had a DPF regen frequency code. And some of you guys that have these diesels are very familiar with that code as well. When you overfill these engines, a lot of that oil goes right back up through the CCV, which doesn't capture it all, and dumps it right back into the intake of the turbo. When you get that oil that goes in the intake of the turbo, spins around, goes through the intercooler, around the other side, and right back up through the throttle body and into the intake manifold. And that oil sticks to every surface that it comes in contact with.
So if you don't know what CCV is, crankcase ventilation, that's what he was referencing. So when that oil goes back through, it makes so much sense. This right here is what plugged up, obviously, that grid heater. And something else to consider too, and this is what I want to talk about, separate from him. So again, like I said, if you want to watch the whole video, feel free. I'm not going to watch his entire video because I want you guys to go over there and watch this. But here's something that he didn't mention, and I want you guys to really take this at face value. When you consider how expensive these trucks are, understand the dealership you're going to. You hear a master tech here talking. He does not necessarily get oil changes. The only time he does oil changes is if there's a major service that needs to be done, whether he's doing the crankcase ventilation change on the truck, whether he's doing a EGR cleaning, something that's going to probably pay him 3+ hours basically. So in a lot of cases, he may not actually work on your truck just for oil change and tire rotations. Now he might grab a service like that and just do a preventative maintenance check on the truck to see if there's something that he can maybe offer the customer to do, like I just mentioned, like the EGR or something that the customer maybe had not have thought about he needs done, like fuel filters while he's already up in the air, things like that. But in a lot of cases, as I just said, a lot of dealerships do not follow this process for changing the oil on your truck. That's why I always recommend, and this is how I do my oil changes at the Jerry Sonic store that I go to. I always drop my truck off and I always allow them to basically have to go take it into the shop, warm it up, so that way that oil will drain. Because the guy that does the oil change on my truck, he's not a master tech, but he's not a quick lube guy either. So he actually has to take it into the shop, and he actually does do exactly what Josh just said. You know how I know? Because I watched him do it. So literally the truck sat up there for about 30-45 minutes, and while he drains the oil, because he sends me a video of it too, because that's what Jerry Sonic does as well. And so while the oil is draining, he's taking the wheels and tires off, inspecting the wear of the brake pads, things like that. And by the time he's done putting those wheels and tires back on, 15 minutes has already passed. So now at that point, he can drop down, do more of his inspections on just certain parts on the truck. And then from that point on, boom, now he can go ahead and put that drain plug back in. But you'll hear Josh say it in his video, Rams, they hold about a half a quart of oil. GM trucks do about a full quart of oil. So you cannot overfill these engines. And he talks about tolerances too. That's something that a lot of people don't understand about these new versus the old diesel engines. The older diesel engines had way more tolerances than the ones have today. And a lot of it has to do with emissions. But something else to consider, back in the day, if you missed and put 3 gallons of gas in your truck not paying attention, you could run into the store and dump a little bit of oil into the fuel tank to kind of dilute that gasoline, and then by that time it can go up into the engine, burn off, and it won't even affect the truck. You can't do that today. You put oil inside that fuel tank on your diesel truck and that diesel gets burnt by the combustion and goes through that DPF, you will literally just, like, it would clog up basically. It will have to be replaced, or it would have to be removed and cleaned manually by yours truly, your master tech. So yes, one thing to consider when you are taking your truck into a shop is know who's working on your truck and if they're actually following these procedures for at least a 30-minute drain. Make sure they're getting that engine up to operating temperature. Like I said, I like to drop my truck off and leave it because I don't want them to feel like they have to rush it out. I want them to take their time with my nearly $100,000 truck and $26,000 engine. So let me know your guys' thoughts. I feel as though if I were to get a Ram truck today, 2024 or earlier, I would 100% go ahead and do the Banks intake upgrade. I would just go ahead and do it. I would do it because it just makes sense. It's not going to have that restriction, number one. You don't have to worry about that bolt, falling off. Although I will say the bolt is not much of an issue because they fixed that with the relay. So they figured out why that bolt was weakening and breaking off. But Josh just did yet another one of those trucks two weeks ago. So again, they're still happening, right? That bolt is still breaking off. So I would still recommend just doing the Banks intake upgrade. From what I've seen, it does not affect the warranty on the truck. Not saying that some dealer or maybe you might get the wrong inspector, but from what I've seen from Josh and what I've heard from Banks and other people, the Banks upgrade does not affect warranty. So hope you guys like this video. Be sure to share your comments. I do get a 10% discount on Banks products for Ram trucks too. So if you would like to do the upgrade on your truck, I will have a link down below getting 10% off on that. And if you live in Utah or if you are going to be traveling through here, you could have Josh put it on for you because he's done like hundreds of them at this point, I think. Maybe not 100, but he's done quite a bit. I would say he's done at least over 20. So he knows what he's doing and he can knock it out pretty quickly for you. So yes, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. See you guys soon.